This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
The biggest icon in podcasting.
Welcome in, everybody, to another episode of the DocNJock Wrestling Podcast. This is episode 167. I'm your host, Adam the Jock Strozinski. Today, we've got a little bit of information about what WrestleMania may look like, as well as what the Hall of Fame induction might look like, as well as this international star trying to make their way back to AEW. You notice how I didn't say he or she? I've got the details in the news and notes. Of course, we're going to take a look at the biggest topics and trends in wrestling, and doing it with me, as always, this is our preparing for the Royal Rumble episode, as I think next week it's our go-home episode for the Royal Rumble. Doing it with me, as always, he's the one, he's the only, he is the Doc, John Macaroon. What's up, cuz?
What's up? Great week of professional wrestling.
Wait,
AEW.
hold up. You can't come on here and say great week. Before we came on the airways here, we were talking about Raw and how it was brutal. How are you going to say great week when Raw was a dumpster fire?
So does Raw, I think at this point we can eliminate Raw from really the evaluation because it's so average. AEW kicked ass.
Stop watching.
Yeah, AEW kicked ass. NXT was pretty sweet, bro. You gotta admit, Smackdown is really, when you look at it, utilizing stars so much better in stark contrast to Raw. And then Impact had more dudes showing up. The owner of AEW showed up on Impact. It was an awesome week of professional wrestling. Raw is just a dumpster fire. I think they've just given up. They're like, dude, we got 3 hours. We're going to fill some shit and let's just figure it out. They're underutilizing so much talent. It's so bad that we're at the point where it's just like, yeah, Raw sucked. Just kind of, we'll just recap it real fast.
Well, let's do a shit sandwich then. Let's start with the good, then we'll do the bad, and then we'll do the good again. So let's start with SmackDown. You said it. SmackDown has been very, very interesting. The way that they've utilized a ton of their talent has been absolutely remarkable. And I think what you're beginning to see is Adam Pearce become a very key, integral character when it comes to everybody and everything on WWE, except for NXT. Adam Pearce has become a staunch, I don't want to say he's an authority figure because he is an authority figure, but he has become a staunch character. Almost what Mr. McMahon's character was, but without all of the pomp and circumstance, without him actually being a dick. Adam Pearce is there to basically serve as judge and jury and executioner of whatever's taking place. And you've seen it this week. You had this ongoing storyline between him and Roman Reigns, looping in Paul Heyman, and it all revolves around what's going to take place at the Royal Rumble. And Adam Pearce hesitantly signs this contract to join Roman Reigns at the Royal Rumble in a match. Instead, there's this monster swerve because Roman Reigns doesn't want that particular match. Roman Reigns instead wants a last man standing match. Adam Pearce ends up signing the contract, gets Roman Reigns to sign the contract in the ring at the very, very end. And then as he's walking away, all of a sudden, and I say all of a sudden, his trick knee acts up, bringing out the guy who we talked about last week. Where's he at? Why isn't he facing Roman Reigns? Kevin Owens, to take on Roman Reigns in the last man standing match. I think this was a fantastic setup, and it was a really, really good execution. I don't want to say it was a fantastic execution because we're going to talk about some of the production issues with what took place at this one segment of SmackDown, but I thought the way it was laid out and the way it played out was fantastic.
Absolutely. I think that when you and I discussed last time about Adam Pearce, we were like, this doesn't make any sense. But with the swerve, absolutely perfect. Kevin Owens needs to obviously be in main event matches. Roman Reigns, I think, is great. But more importantly, how should Kevin Owens look when he loses? Is this something that he just absolutely takes a beating, or back and forth where you actually believe that he's going to win the match? No, none of us believe that he's going to win. But how should this be booked properly to kick off his 2021 the right way? Because I think he's going to just obviously... The man does not care about his body. He will fling himself all over. If there's only one match that you're going to watch from the Royal Rumble, I would advocate it should be Owens and Roman Reigns, because Owens is not afraid to sacrifice his body. He will do whatever it takes to make this a great classic match. I'm actually now intrigued and excited to see it.
Yeah, no, I think you're 100% on the money when you say that. I mean, he is a guy who has shown time and time again that he doesn't care. He'll risk life and limb for the big spot. Now, I think the way it has to come off is he has to come across as a viable contender to Roman Reigns. He has to. There has to be a moment in this match where you're like, he might actually win this. Or when they're doing a false count, you've got to be on the edge of your seat buying into this. I think that's the only way this can work. I think you have to have, and I agree with you when you say this is probably going to be the match of the night. There has to be a way to convince the audience and pull the audience in to really buying into Kevin Owens having a legitimate shot to dethrone the Universal Champion, Roman Reigns. That's the only way this works. And I think Kevin Owens is such a star where he doesn't have to win this match. He can obviously get the rub from working with Roman Reigns, and Roman Reigns will get the rub from working with him, but you have to set this up to where it's a convincing, great match. The one thing that was not great about this was the production angle of all of this. When Adam Pearce was trying to make this announcement about how Kevin Owens is going to come in to wrestle in his stead, the microphone kept cutting out. Production kept trying on the fly to get things to go. I don't know if you noticed the audio volume switching from the direct feed to the over the PA feed to what was getting piped into everybody who was live on the video boards feed. They kept trying different things. How do you not have an issue as far as your production goes all show long, but the most important angle of the night, you somehow screw it up? How does that happen?
It's interesting too, because in the world of technology, you would think that WWE would have it so locked down that you'd have plan B and C in case of a technical glitch. You know, it's a worldwide company, $1 billion in the bank, and you just get you get an unbelievable amount of cash to broadcast your product, and it's not absolutely fail-safe. It happens. It's live television. Shit happens. But in regards to it, it was herky-jerky, and I was just like, wow. It just kind of ruined the flow of things and kind of ruined a moment that you could have captured. But it happens, man. It's technology. It glitches. You know, you just got to roll with it and hope that it doesn't ever happen again because, yeah, it definitely – it did. It felt like it ruined a real cool moment. Yeah,
no, for sure. And you kind of talked about how they've utilized different superstars way better than Raw has, or even in certain occasions NXT. And I think we both agree NXT is probably the best out of the bunch. But you're seeing now a bit of a push for Shinsuke Nakamura, and you're seeing a bit of a push for Cesaro.
Yes,
both of them coming up big winners on this week's SmackDown. And I think it's fantastic. These two guys were part of a tag team, and now they're doing their own things as singles competitors. And they were big matches. Nakamura ended up defeating Jey Uso, which I'm really not sure what the hell they're doing with Jey Uso at this point. It seems like every time he comes out, he's just a foil for Roman Reigns, and he just ends up losing, as well as Cesaro taking on Daniel Bryan and getting a big win over Daniel Bryan. I mean, this is fantastic. This is something we've been asking for. Utilize these guys. These guys are fantastic. And I think they're finally starting to do it, which is nice.
Yeah, exactly. When you have the likes of a Daniel Bryan, and then you can give rub to Shinsuke Nakamura, that's what you're supposed to do. You know, you and I were questioning why potentially Daniel Bryan has been taking a backseat, but if it's in an effort to kind of elevate everybody and move people along, I mean, Sami Zayn, you got to credit him and what he's done. He's made the show interesting. Like, oh, okay, let's see what Sami's up to. You get a chance to see some of the talent that has been featured over there on SmackDown. It is a lot more entertaining, and it makes, I guess the best way to put it, cuz, is storylines are starting to make sense. They are interesting. They actually go, oh, okay, someone wrote down a note, followed it up with some intrigue, followed up with a plan, and actually executed it on television. Oh, what do you know? Which is the complete stark opposite of Raw. And that's why it's so glaring, in that it just literally appears that they show up on Sunday and are like, all right, what are we doing for Raw? We got to kill 3 hours. All right, let's just have Alexa do this, and let's have this happen. It doesn't tie together. It doesn't make sense, and none of the stories work. Or I'll say this, cuz, bottom line, if your star gets coronavirus and he's not there, and you decide that the main event should be a 51-year-old executive, that really inherently is a subconscious or overt diss to your roster. You don't put AJ Styles there. You don't elevate Ricochet. You don't put the vast number of people that are really talented on that roster on Raw into that position. It goes to show you that WWE has this way, way antiquated opinion of what to do with their talent when it's like, oh, plan B is Triple H. That barely scratched a dent in the ratings. So why would you think that that would be the best plan? And so with that said, Raw is a mess. I mean, look, bottom line, I think you and I would have just said, dude, okay, Miz, show up in the main event. Let's get you doing something. Let's pop something off. Let's get you into something. Let's get you into something important. So for that decision to be made a couple weeks back was pretty disturbing, and it just has carried on into Raw. I mean, you had, look, we'll give them credit, okay? The Ricochet AJ Styles match, just turn it on for that. It was stellar, and Ricochet, again, has had a lot of quality matches, but when you put him in there with AJ Styles, it's A+ magic. It was awesome. I liked it. I would have potentially said that's the match of the week. It was good. The rest of the show probably didn't need to be aired on any kind of level because it was just not interesting. Stuff didn't pop off the way it should have. People did like the Asuka match, though. They were impressed with it. I think that people were really interested in seeing what she did, but by and large, I only really popped for Alexa taking on Asuka and the AJ Styles match. The rest with Charlotte and Peyton Royce, the Hurt Business. I mean, the Hurt Business took on Lucha House Party. Mace defeated Xavier Woods, Shayna Baszler, and Mandy Rose. It all was just like, all right, it felt like a horrible house show.
Yeah, it feels at this point that Raw is a rudderless ship. I mean, you talked about it when you mentioned The Miz. You remember when he was an A-lister? I mean, you got this guy now doing segments with Gilbert, and I'm just going to name him Drew Mack. I'm tired. It was a cringeworthy segment. You're right. The best thing on this show, and it's just because they're fantastic performers, AJ Styles versus Ricochet. You could put those guys in a cardboard box on the side of a road, and people will pay you $50 to watch these guys go ham on each other. They're just fantastic athletes. Why they're not main eventing your Monday Night Raw program doesn't make any damn sense to me. Why The Miz isn't being utilized to more of his full potential. I mean, this was a guy who now somehow finagled his way into getting the Money in the Bank briefcase, lost it, got it back. You could figure something out to do with him, and you could still loop in the main event with him threatening to cash in on whoever wins that match, yet you don't. Yet you have him sit there with a segment with Gilbert and a Drew McIntyre midget lookalike. It's just poor. And you're right. I think the one bright spot has been what they've done with Alexa Bliss. I'm not sure where her storyline's going, but I absolutely love it. I'm here for the ride. She has been absolutely fantastic. And this is no surprise to either one of us because she was somebody that we wanted to build this women's division around. She is incredible at everything she does. And then they do this mid-match transformation, which is, hey, great editing and great production on their part. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. Her going from this schoolgirl kind of lollygagging in the ring to this dark creature. I thought what they've done with Alexa Bliss has been absolutely fantastic. But the rest of Raw is ungodly brutal. It's awful. I seen something pop up on my YouTube channel. It was something that generally I watch and I listen to. And it was from Figure 4 online. It's basically what Dave Meltzer and Brian Alvarez, it's who they work for. Every now and then they'll put different YouTube videos out. And I'll watch them a lot of times while I'm cooking. And usually it's 2 or 3 weeks behind that I'm trying to catch up on everything. But one of the videos really struck my attention. I wanted to ask you about this because I think they nailed it. I think they absolutely nailed it with the title of one of their videos. And I haven't listened to the video yet, so I'm not sure where they actually go with it. I seen the title of it and I was like, it's so on the money that I had to ask you. The title of the video is Raw 2021 has become WCW of the 2000s.
Oh,
and I think it's accurate. I think it's accurate.
Dagger, bro. That's you know what? That's probably encompassing what it is. Mm-hmm. Is that Raw is the show that has least hit the mark and has dipped the biggest because it's tough to categorize what's going on by what you see in regards to what you have. It's like, who's in control? Why is it being put this way? Why is this being tolerated week after week? You've seen a downslide in ratings, and you know what they're going to do. They're going to bring back potentially Brock Lesnar. They'll try herky-jerky ratings boosts, but by and large, people have turned off because your segments aren't good segment by segment. You got to build a TV show. You got to build interest. You got to use your stars. Nobody wants to see Triple H's 51-year-old ass out there in the main event. Nobody wants to see that. And you've done a good job with Randy Orton, with Alexa Bliss, but also, too, I would say that the biggest reason this has gone this way is when you have stars that people like The Fiend, and you give him a belt for a month, and you constantly have a directionless star that people want to cheer for, and you don't deliver way more often than you don't, you piss off your fans. And in 2021, with what's going on with Netflix, with sports, with what people can do with their time, bro, there's darn near 14 different channels you can stream or streaming services you can buy into. If you're not gravitating and giving the people what they want more often than not, they just do the simple click and go to something else. And right now they're going to AEW in droves, they're going to NXT, and they're going to SmackDown. And it is a cycle. I know it's a down cycle, but they're not getting it back anytime soon.
No, I don't think there's a way for them to get it back. I mean, to be honest with you, if we didn't do this show, I wouldn't watch Raw at all. It's a chore for me to watch it. And they've not given you anything that is noteworthy, that is worth your time, worth your effort to watch, or even try to schedule it into your busy schedule if that's why you're not tuning in. And you're right, they will try some random thing to pop a number by bringing a guy like Brock Lesnar back, when in actuality, it's much more simple than that. It's difficult to give it to them, but in concept, it's much more simple. Just give good, meaningful stories that capture people. I mean, NXT does it. AEW does it. You're going to talk about Impact. I think Impact is doing it. So it's not hard. I mean, SmackDown does it. It's just for some reason, this one brand continues to miss the mark. And I don't know. I mean, everybody says it's because it's 3 hours. But I find it hard to even find a good hour in your Monday Night Raw programming that makes me want to sit there and watch it. So I don't think it's even 3 hours. I think it's what the ideas that they're coming up with. I think it's the way that they're constructing their stories. I think it's how they're filling their stories. I think it's kind of a mixed bag. It's all just a big poopy diaper that's been set on fire.
Yeah, it's just a show that you just basically prioritize. Now, next week, you might pay attention because it's a go-home show, but they haven't delivered on a lot of go-home shows. I would even argue it's a show that you should put last in your weekly viewing, even behind Impact. That's how bad it is.
I would say record it, and then if you have time, come back and watch it. Otherwise, just catch highlights online. You can go to their YouTube channel. You can get caught up on everything that's important in roughly 5 minutes.
Read, find out if there's a segment you like. Boom, go back.
That's it. So I mean, we've kind of danced all around NXT here, and I thought NXT again another really good show. This was one of those shows where they're basically stringing one Wednesday night to another Wednesday night, and then you've got stuff kind of in the middle here. This was that stuff in the middle, but I think it was a really, really good show for a couple different reasons. You've got everything going on with your Dusty Rhodes Classic tag team with both the men and the ladies. I thought it was great to highlight the women. Thought that was absolutely fantastic. Misty Martinez is now back, and it looks like Io Shirai and her are going to have some conflict, and that's got me interested because Io Shirai is fantastic. But you had another fight pit match with Timothy Thatcher. Last time Timothy Thatcher was in this match, it was with Matt Riddle. He had his teeth busted out. That's why if you ever notice Timothy Thatcher, when he smiles, his teeth are a little bit girked up. It's because he's working on getting his implants, because his actual teeth have been knocked out of his mouth by Matt Riddle. He challenged Tommaso Ciampa, or I should say Tommaso Ciampa challenged him. In this match, I thought Tommaso Ciampa was going to win. Tommaso Ciampa ends up submitting to Timothy Thatcher, which I think is fantastic. Thatcher's a guy who you can work with, who needs to be built up. This is a really nice rub for a guy like Thatcher. Ciampa doesn't need it. But I think what you're seeing now is you're starting to see, because we're getting near Royal Rumble time, you're starting to see maybe Tommaso Ciampa's NXT days are done. Maybe he's all set with the yellow brand. Maybe next time we see him, because I don't think he'll be on NXT next week, we'll be at the Royal Rumble, and then after that, he will be either on the red or the blue brand. What do you think about that?
you got to put them on red because of the fact that they just need such a jolt. And I don't know if I see it here on the news, just real quickly on Raw. What happened to Aleister Black? Is he injured or did I miss something here? Because I think I saw a headline, Aleister Black hasn't had a wrestling match in like 3 months.
There's no interest in him.
They lost interest in Aleister Black?
Like creative has zero interest in him. McMahon has zero interest in him. So Aleister Black, remember when we were talking about him like every week because his character was doing so damn well? That was because Paul Heyman was in charge of creative. And since Paul Heyman has been removed from creative, I don't know if you've noticed, but Aleister Black is not on TV anymore.
I've noticed when I saw the headline, I'm like, yeah, wait a minute. I thought it was an injury. I went back and I said, okay, I definitely noted to ask you this week. Oh my God, that's all you got to say.
Bruce Pritchard and Vince McMahon have no interest in him.
You have no interest in him. Okay, I think we can pencil him to AEW, and there'll be interest right away. Because if that's the case, if you're Aleister Black and you're like, that's my character, and you have let me go and felt like that's my place, peace. I'm gone. I'm gone.
Yeah, for sure.
Hopefully his contract's up.
It should be expiring here very, very soon. So we'll see what happens with him. I mean, if anything, you try to go back to NXT until his contract runs out. But I mean, otherwise, he's just kind of sitting on his couch collecting a paycheck, which good for you.
All right.
But you also look at what's happened with his wife. So she basically, Zelina Vega ends up getting escorted out of WWE, and she's making more money on all of her other platforms. So, I mean, it's one of those things where I don't think he's really upset about it. I think he's just biding his time and waiting for his contract to lapse. Absolutely. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. Now, speaking of interesting, I want to know how interested you are in Finn Balor and Kyle O'Reilly preparing for a tag team match next week. I thought the way that they set this up was incredible. Finn Balor bursts into Steven Regal's office and he wants to take out Orny Loken and Danny Burch, and then he says he's going to take on Pete Dunne. I'm assuming that we're going to get Pete Dunne and we're going to get Finn Balor for the NXT over the Royal Rumble weekend is what I'm assuming. Don't quote me, but that's what I'm assuming. I think that's where we're going with this. But he said, I'm going to rip off the arms and then I'll take off the head. So I want a 2-on-1 handicap match. And Regal's like, I can't do that. You're really not even close to being cleared to being able to wrestle. You need to find a tag partner. So he says, I know a couple guys who owe me a favor, which I thought was really, really strange the way he said that. I was like, a couple guys who owe you a favor. And like, I thought we were building towards Undisputed Era Finn Balor. But when he said, a couple guys who owe me a favor, I was like, what? Like, no, I don't think that's the case. But that's exactly who he goes to. Goes to Adam Cole, goes to Roderick Strong, and goes to Kyle O'Reilly, and goes directly to Kyle O'Reilly and says, hey, you going to tag with me next week? You going to be my dude? You going to have my back? And O'Reilly's like, yeah. I'm so interested in where they go with this. Like watching this unfold out loud, I was like, this is really interesting to me. I'm wondering where they're going to go with this. And I have no idea where they're going to take this. But I'm intrigued.
Exactly, because it could go a lot of different ways. Does Finn turn? Does Kyle turn? Who does what? Do they actually align? A lot of good things, right? What's the best? Mm-hmm. What's a plus plan in your mind? If they go, okay, here's the book, Adam, finally, after our numerous tweets to them, tweeting Vince and Triple H, and they go, okay, write it out. What's plan A?
I think if you were to do some type of a swerve where one turns on the other, I think it's a little bit too early for that. I think you can kind of build this up. I think you bring Finn Balor in.
Yep, slow build.
What's that?
Slow build until a turn.
Absolutely slow build. I think you bring Finn Balor into the Undisputed Era, or you bring in Finn Balor and you bring in Adam Cole and you have them bring Roderick Strong and Bobby Fish and Kyle O'Reilly, and you do your own version of the Bullet Club. And you have Finn Balor and Adam Cole kind of lead the thing. And then at some point, you could have Kyle O'Reilly turn on Finn Balor if you want, because there's so much history here. And it seems like every time these two guys get in a match, somebody's leaving with either a broken jaw or busted teeth. But I love how they're doing this. And this is what we're talking about. This is simple. This is so simple. We are hooked on a match that hasn't even happened yet. We're just hooked on the idea of this match happening. And that's really good storytelling, because you've gotten just the groundwork on it, from one awesome match to another awesome match to these two hard-headed guys going to each other to help each other out. Like it's incredible storytelling, because just us spitballing this, do they turn? Do they partner up? Do they end up forming some mass unit where you've got all these guys working together? Like, what do? You can do anything. You can do anything your imagination allows you to conceive. It is because they've done such a good job laying the groundwork to tell this story. And I think that's what we really want when it comes to Monday Night Raw. And I think SmackDown does a pretty good job with it. And that's what we want as wrestling fans. What would you end up doing? How would you book this?
You know what? For a while, I would say the same thing. Let it go for a minute, maybe good 3-4 months, maybe even become champions. You never know. Maybe even have something where it's really serious and you have an opportunity to really make a nice swerve. But bottom line, Finn Balor, probably one of the more interesting characters there on NXT. He really, for you and I, he shined. And it's a real good reason for him to be there, because the interesting note with Finn Balor is you and I are like, dude, he's being underutilized. But I think for him, he probably saw the writing on the wall, or somebody gave him advice and said, look, you were the Universal Champion. You were in the biggest stuff. They don't like, small guys. Vince just doesn't like it. So why not just be the biggest star on NXT, and you'll get great matches. You'll be able to look like the biggest entity on a brand. It's way better to probably be viewed as the biggest guy that's being underutilized than to be wasted and to be Aleister Black on Raw. So I think he wisened up and said, you know what, put me there. I'll be featured, and my talents will at least get me attention. And I think that's probably the best thing for him. I think you and I know that in real circumstances with real good bookers, Finn Balor does not belong on NXT. But thank God that he is, because he's carrying a show, and now you have some intrigue going forward.
Speaking about intrigue and going forward, what the hell took place on Impact this week?
Ooh, the alliance, the working relationship was the bomb. It was sweet. Finally, what have we said? We've said that the first hour needs to pick up on Impact. It was like they listened, and they started off with Eric Young and Rhino, with Young defeating the veteran, and it was great. It was a hot start. Finally, something interesting to catch people's attention. And then the Good Brothers come out, and they're doing their thing, and the tag champs make their way to the ring, fresh off their win at Hard to Kill with Kenny Omega. They're styling and profiling, doing their thing. All of a sudden, a surprise happens. And guess who shows up on Impact? Matt Hardy and Private Party. And it was legit. And I think everybody popped. Everybody loved it. And to see Private Party and Matt Hardy interrupt was awesome. And the great thing is that, you know what? It's starting to feel like Impact could become like the NXT of this working relationship. I think that you can have a lot of talent that potentially, like, look at Private Party. You got on AEW, there's the Young Bucks, FTR, the Lucha Brothers. So a team like Private Party can get overshadowed. So what do? You send them to Impact a little bit with somebody that has clout, and you get them over. And it's such a beautiful, beautiful opportunity. And they got into a match, which was awesome. Then it kind of slowed down a little bit in terms of where, right there in the middle, going into the second hour, Kimberly and Susan took on Jordan, Grace, and Jazz, with Susan and Lee defeating Grace and Jazz. C+, not too much going on there. Rich Swann called out Moose, and it was really an evolution and really, really good. Swann, it's interesting in the character that he's kind of put together now. He's still trying to find his voice, and he still hasn't had a lot of mic time. So to see it, I think it was really good. And I think that as he evolves and gets a little bit more time behind the mic and to kind of evolve his character, then he can be that real, true main event dude and to solidify himself as a champ. You had Brian Myers taking on Falaba, and Myers gets the W. Now, the main event was sweet. It was Private Party taking on Chris Sabina and James Storm. And I thought that Private Party got a chance to shine, and it was really sweet in regards to, seeing Chris Sabin and James Storm in the ring together. So it was really good and really, really solid. Excuse me, I said Chris Sabina. I was just reading something else there. Chris Sabin. The main event, I thought, was flat out A+. I thought the match was strong, action-packed. Private Party, you said to yourself, wow, you have Tony Khan and Jerry Lynn, the forgotten Jerry Lynn, the behind-the-scenes guy, the man that also had a great run at ECW. You saw them at ringside. You saw everything going down. And for me, it put like a huge stamp of like, yes, a partnership that was developed. Because a lot of times a partnership can go and you don't have the right things going on. So you have this partnership and it's taken off. Bro, you're going to see Matt Hardy on Impact every week now. You have to show up and watch to make sure, like, on what planet would you see Vince McMahon on NXT? Which they should do. I mean, you have the brand and you don't take advantage of it, right?
No, you're right. You're absolutely right.
On what planet would you see Vince McMahon show up on a different brand?
Probably Jupiter, because it sure as hell isn't happening here.
So it's funny. It was cool to see, and it really kicked off a good show. So by and large, A-. Their first A of the year, in my opinion. It was a good show, highlighted by some big surprises. They actually started off with a great classic wrestling match, finished off with a young tag team from AEW getting the rub. And look, I'm not gonna lie. I like Chris Sabin. I like what he does. Underrated. I think you got something there with that kid. I think he's great. I think Chris Sabin, established kid, established career. Give him some more. Push him in there. Give him some.
I like how you refer to Chris Sabin as a kid. He's like in his 40s.
Yeah, I know. I know. I just was saying that, even though, well, look at my reference. You got Ric Flair still out there at 60, Sting
That's
showing
true.
up on AEW, 40. Like, look, AJ Styles still a kid in the wrestling world. Dudes want to be out there wrestling till they're 70.
True.
40's the new 20 now. It looks like. I think in regards to it, you look at some of the wrestlers that are 40 right now. That's a really, I think, the prime age nowadays to really kick off a career, because I think that 38 to 43, because the way WWE marinates all their talent, it takes them freaking 10 years to get over. Then they're like, oh, we should use this guy, and then from 38 to 43, they start getting some rub. Right, but Chris Sabin's been around, obviously, a veteran
for a while.
Yeah, but I think that he should continue to be put in the main event. He looked like he belonged.
Yeah, he's absolutely fantastic in the ring. He's what you would call a ring general. The guy is a savant in the ring, really and truly. Now, and on top of that, he's from Michigan, so hey. Now, fresh off the heels of everything that took place on Impact, you have AEW, and with AEW, it would appear as if the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega are dissolving right before our eyes. Like, the Elite is no more. They did a really good job kind of giving you a bit of a cliffhanger here. And at this point, I think they're starting to sow some seeds of distrust with Don Callis. But you have this confrontation between the Young Bucks and Don Callis. And next thing you know, the camera kind of fades to black. And next time you see Don Callis, he's been put through the ringer. He's been beat up. And he basically says that it was Nick and Matt, and Kenny's pissed. Kenny's absolutely pissed. Are we going to have a breakup of the Elite?
Yeah, I didn't want it. That was one of the angles I was like, oh, what's going on with this? I guess it makes sense, the evolution of a relationship, but I don't think it's the right direction. I think they should have kept it going. The Elite's been strong for many years. You think it's the right time to do this?
No, I don't. I really thought that you could have pulled all these guys together and had something really nice and really special. Instead, you're going to go this way. Now, this is interesting. It's not like it's not interesting. It's just not the direction I would have went. It's just not what I would have done. But I'm curious as to what's going to happen going forward. So I think if you're from a booking standpoint, you're doing your job because you've got me interested. And I want to know what's going to happen. So I'm going to tune in next week to see what the hell is going to happen with this relationship. Speaking of dissolving relationships, what the hell is going on with the Inner Circle? We end up having a 3-way tag team match that MJF and Chris Jericho end up winning, where everybody in the Inner Circle except for Wardlow takes each other on. Is the Inner Circle breaking up, or is this just some type of weird power play? How do you read this situation?
Yeah, factions and wrestling.
Lots of factions within a faction.
You're right, and I think that factions are made to dissolve. You remember when the Mega Powers broke up? I was heartbroken. I remember that Saturday Night Live when Elizabeth got in the middle. I stayed up for that one. I remember that specifically, going, no! It set up WrestleMania 5 and everything in regards to Elizabeth crying and breaking, the Mega Powers breaking up, and Hogan and his role and everything. So the factions now, they're made to unite to create angles. I think, bottom line, you're going to split this up. I think that there's far too much talent to keep everybody together. It was great, but I think we're starting to see maybe Chris Jericho wind it down just a touch. And I think that A+ prime option, split up the Inner Circle. Jericho is now the mouthpiece for MJF. And he shows up there just like Arn Anderson, and Jericho can become the talented voice on the microphone, wrestle twice a year. Dude's 51 years old almost is going to be when this contract ends. I think it's time to become MJF's valet and let him ride the coattails, because it's like a perfect marriage. Literally, MJF is a 26-year younger version of Chris Jericho. So why not pair them together? The rest can go on. The Boricuas can actually get over. I think the group pretty much is overshadowing itself. It's not as hot as it was, and I think other things are overshadowing. So I'm down for moving on.
Yeah, I don't know. See, I see it happening. I see them breaking up, or what I see happening is MJF taking over. I'm going to be there for the ride. I'm interested to see how this plays out, though. But don't be surprised if MJF is the one who's left standing and everybody surrounds and insulates MJF, and Chris Jericho is the one who's on the outside looking in. Now, earlier on Thursday, it was made official by Tony Khan. We are going to have Sting and Darby Allin taking on Brian Cage and Ricky Starks in a street fight. I want to know what you're hoping for with Sting, because if you're going to put this man in a match, and it's going to be his first match in what feels like 100 years, I don't know if I'm putting him in a street fight. Now, the street fight could really help protect him a little bit and not show some of his ring rust. But all that being said, I don't need Sting taking any crazy bumps. So what's your hope for Sting in his AEW debuting match next week?
Darby Allin does all the work. Stinger splash, one move. You get in the ring for all of like 40 seconds. Survive and just let Sting be standing there looking like Sting. I don't need flurries. Basically, it's like short bursts. You get 30 seconds in, boom, get him out. 30 seconds in, get him out. Stinger splash, finishing maneuver, ending DDT, boom, and it's done. Scorpion Deathlock or whatever it is move is going to be in AEW. I just don't want to panic. I don't want to see Sting get hurt. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think that he's going to be doing a whole heck of a lot of bumping. I think Sting will be made to look like a beast, and he will be doing and carrying a lot of the action. You know, take some chops, things like that. He's not going to be doing no high spots. Low work rate, maximum effect. Give me 45 seconds of Sting. Let me pop. Basically, Darby does all the work. Tag in Sting. Boom, boom, action, action, momentum. You know, Darby Allin getting his ass kicked throughout the whole match. Boom, 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 gets into Sting. Boom, boom, momentum. Sting's the closer. Finishing maneuver. Sting wins. We all cheer. He's healthy. We move on.
I mean, hopefully it happens that way. I don't need this man taking any crazy bumps. Let Darby Allin do a ton of the work and let Sting use his baseball bat and just look like 50-year-old Sting. That's all I need. Right. I don't need a whole lot more than that.
Absolutely.
But otherwise, anything else on AEW that really had you interested and really had you going?
Yeah. Obviously, when Jon Moxley grabs the when he grabs the microphone, he delivered a hell of a promo. I'm interested. So A+, probably best moment of that show as well. So great stuff all the way around from AEW. Jon Moxley teaching folks how to cut a promo. Just watch that. If you're a young up-and-comer, if you're a Rich Swann and you need to see how to do it right, look at Jon Moxley. I was glued. I caught it. It was awesome. A++. All right, cuz, hit me with this week's professional wrestling news and notes. What caught your attention this week?
All right, this week in news and notes, Dave Meltzer of the Wrestling News Observer said WWE is planning to have its Hall of Fame inductions virtually. The 2020 class, which was highlighted by, or should have been highlighted by, the NWO, Batista, and JBL, is set to be inducted this year after last year's ceremony was canceled because of everything going on with COVID-19. It's unclear if the additional names will be added to make this a mega class. So we're going to have to kind of wait and see, but don't be surprised if they do that. Now, speaking of WrestleMania could again be a 2-night event similar to like it was last year. WWE is talking about having fans in attendance, so we'll see how that goes. Again, with everything going on with COVID, everything's kind of wait and see. But don't be surprised if WrestleMania is a 2-night event this year. During this week's episode of the New Day Feel the Power podcast, Kofi Kingston revealed how he suffered a broken jaw. Kofi noted that a member of the Hurt Business was the culprit. He said, "Back to when I injured my jaw, so I got kneed in the face by Cedric Alexander 3 weeks ago. A couple of my teeth were chipped. It was fine. It was cool. The point of impact was really sore. So I thought, okay, it's a bruise or whatever. The next week, we had a 6-man match and everything was fine. A little pain, but not terrible." He later went on to say it was just a nuisance to wrestle with it. That's basically why he's been sidelined and he's not wrestling right now, letting it heal. It's just too much for him to deal with. He went on to say if there were fans in the stands, he said it'd be a little bit different because you could run off that energy and it helps dull some of that pain. Now, former AEW Women's Champion Rio is looking to come back to AEW, the inaugural AEW Women's Champion. She has left Stardom in Japan, and she's looking to transition back into the United States and join AEW. Now, COVID will be a bit of an issue here with her coming back since she is coming from Japan. So this is going to be one of those things where don't expect to see her next week. Don't expect to see her in 2 weeks. Maybe in a month, you might be able to get her. But she's looking to come back and join AEW. If you remember, she was the really small Japanese woman who won the very first ever AEW Women's World Championship match. She ended up beating Nyla Rose. So it'll be interesting if they can work her back in, because her and Shida, I think, could have some fantastic, fantastic matches if they got in the ring together. And that's going to do it for this week's Wrestling News and Notes.
Yes, sir. Make sure you follow Adam on Twitter at AdamRSTROZ. Follow the network at Detroit Podcast. Thank you, everybody who in the past 12 months have subscribed, listened, download. I love it when, the evening hours roll along and a friend of the podcast, Adam's like, hey, you guys dropping the podcast? I need my fix. It really means a lot. It's cool. We're part of your lives and, part of the wrestling community. It's real fun. And I appreciate messages like that. It makes me work a little harder to get everything all up. And my apologies. We'll try my best to get everything up sooner. But no doubt about it, every Friday at some point, the wrestling show will come out and we'll break it all down. Anywhere your favorite podcast is located, make sure you type in Detroit Sports Podcast, and our daily content will find you. Adam does great work on the practice squad. We got other shows covering Michigan football, DocNJock on Thursdays, the Fan Report. Those guys are great. Noah does an amazing job, and I'm sure he's now become a great wrestling fan after knowing that the DOC is the MVP of the wrestling podcast. So it's all good, baby. And for those that are huge marks, it's all good, baby. Ric Flair doing his thing. He's probably like, Triple H, I'm bored. Things are looking stale. Put me with Lacey. Let me make sure everything's working. And by and large, looks like everything's working with the Nature Boy. Lucky guy, man. Gets to show up on TV and work with Lacey Evans. Not a bad life for a guy in his late 60s, early 70s, huh? Not a bad way of living.
That would be
to show
too
up
bad.
with get paid, have your boy be an executive, show up and hang out with Lacey Evans and get on TV. It's a good life. And you guys have provided us with a good life by listening, downloading, engaging, messaging us at Detroit Podcast. Thanks again. We look forward to next week where we kick off. We'll wipe the slate clean, right? I won last year. I'm the champ from last year. We'll start at 0-0. Give Adam a chance to lose yet again. And the Royal Rumble preview. It'll be big, it'll be bold, and it'll be fantastic. Talk soon, cuz.
Sounds good.